of us on the Lunch and Learn, and I'm part of the delivery group that administers the NHS Assured Research Fund. This is a relaunch or a reopening, because we were open for over a year and then we had a pause, and Geraldine and Linda will explain that, to just hone things in a little bit. And this is us having a reopening Lunch and Learn. We're recording it, as Linda said, and we'll have two speakers. First of all, it'll be Dr. Geraldine O'Brien. Geraldine is the research manager for NHS Scotland Assure. And after Geraldine has spoken, she'll hand over to Linda Johnson, who we've got on the screen as well. And Linda is our project manager based at Edinburgh Napier University. There will be time for questions. Linda, how are we doing it? Are they putting them in a box somewhere, or is there a question in the chat maybe?
Chat. No. I mean, people can either. I think we're planning to have questions at the very end, so if people can hang on to the end and ask questions, but if they want to put them in the chat, we can pick them up at the end.
I think so. Please feel free to come in at the end, as Linda said, but use the chat as well, and we can maybe pick things up as they're coming through as well. So I'll be monitoring it. Linda will be monitoring the chat as well. Okay, Geraldine, over to you. Welcome.
Well, we kick off then. Okay, I'll just bring up my slide and let's hope this works.
Yep, it's working, Geraldine.
That's good. Okay, folks, we will kick off. So thanks, Donald, for that lovely introduction. Just to reiterate, my name is Geraldine O'Brien and I am Research Manager in NHS Scotland Assure. I also want to thank you for taking time today and for showing interest in the fund. I suppose from my perspective, we wish to share some further insights into the role that NHS Scotland Assure plays within the wider NHS Scotland landscape. And I suppose how that supports us with the aim of achieving a shared understanding on and vision that supports, I suppose, more focused and relevant applications that will arise from this commission. So to give you some background, NHS Scotland Assure has been designed with service users to deliver a coordinated approach to the improvement of risk management and quality in the healthcare environment across NHS Scotland. We underpin a transformation in this approach to promoting excellent, protecting patients from the use of infection and other risks, which ultimately we hope will support better outcomes for the population of Scotland. We do that by providing clinical and technical expertise to help minimise risk and improve quality, practice and sustainability in the healthcare environment. And this is achieved through the provision of expertise and evidence-based advice and guidance that contributes to the risk of reducing risk and delivering a sustainable healthcare service. I suppose the one thing that I kind of want to draw out a bit more here is to understand that the healthcare built environment itself is multifactorial in nature, and that very much reflects the approach that we take with the provision of our subject matter expertise. We bring together clinical and technical subject matter experts to collaborate with stakeholders throughout the development of each stage of the development of a healthcare facility to ultimately deliver safe environments that are free from avoidable risk. We were launched in June 2021, and we are accountable to the Scottish Government. And we help boards provide the assurance that the healthcare environment is safe, fit for purpose and cost effective and capable of delivering services over long term. I see I've lost my notes, which is quite...
You mean on the other PowerPoint?
On my
screen?
PowerPoint, yeah.
Geraldine, if you potentially maybe need to, it looks like there's other control of the slides, potentially due to take control back at the top.
Or if you want, I can move the slides for you, Geraldine.
Hold on, I'll go back in again. That seems to be it now. There we go. I suppose the other thing that I wanted to draw out in terms of the risks that we try and mitigate, those commonly refer to those that are associated with our service systems, and that is through the provision of water and drainage, air, ventilation, electricity, fire prevention and medical gases, and obviously infection control, I suppose, is a consideration, is each part of that. So as I've mentioned previously, we do that through the provision of expertise and evidence-based guidance and advice, and these ultimately contribute to reducing risk. So through the commissioning partnership that we have with Napier University, we aim to commission research that supports NHS Scotland with its aims to deliver the evidence base for the healthcare built environment. And what we really want to do is to encourage and facilitate collaboration and ultimately produce and commission quality healthcare environment research that can be translated into practice, advice and guidance.
Geraldine,
and that's really, really important.
Geraldine, are you on your first slide or have you moved?
I'm on the second slide.
The second one, yes. Okay, that's fine.
Is that all right? Is it working? I'll move on just now. So NHS Scotland Assure has been established to address knowledge and evidence gaps through commissioning, publication and dissemination of research, and that will help us with our supporting structures and processes. We also want to establish relationships with a variety of key stakeholders and develop a network of expertise. I think one of the elements that came back from our engagement with stakeholders quite early on, it was recognised that traditional ways of commissioning research might not give us the outcomes that we need if they're too focused on one specific discipline. And again, that just goes back to the multidisciplinary or the multifactorial approach that is needed to support the healthcare built environment, because the healthcare built environment is multifactorial itself. So we recognise that any research that we're going to have to commission will probably have to reflect that as well. So we have to move away from I suppose, siloed ways of working to help us tap into that more effectively. We want to build capacity and capability within our own, within NHS Scotland Assure. And I think if we can build that capacity and capability within NHS Scotland Assure, that will ultimately make sure that our own workforce is much more sustainable. So we want to
enter your PIN followed by hash.
Oh goodness. The approach that we want to take with research must mirror the approach. I think someone might have on their microphone. If you could turn that off, please, because we can hear it in the background. The approach that we want to take with research must mirror the approach that we take within NHS Scotland itself. And in order to do this, research calls must allow for flexibility for parties to either bid collaboratively or via a consortium, which would be multidisciplinary in focus. As a service, we continuously seek to raise the profile of the healthcare built environment and communicate the importance of collaboration with NHS Scotland boards who would potentially be involved in research. And I suppose the other thing that I want to maybe tap out is that sometimes for a lot of these services within boards, they don't always normally see themselves as taking part of research. And that's something that we're kind of trying to seek to redress as well. So one of the questions that we get asked quite often is, what do we mean by the healthcare environment? And I suppose ultimately we can define that as all NHS Scotland health and care environments where healthcare is delivered. That could also include new builds and refurbishment projects. And that looks at the full life cycle of the build of a healthcare facility, from the strategic assessment right through to the commissioning, building operations, and ultimately the decommissioning of our healthcare facilities. So it's quite a wide range within that. I suppose this is really important as well, because a lot of the commissions that we've received to date, they have, a lot of them have been sound from an academic perspective, but what hasn't always been explicit is how it impacts on our advice and guidance, and that's really pivotal. The guidance and advice produced by NHS Scotland Assure helps ensure that patients, their carers, and those delivering healthcare are in an environment which is not only safe, but is also effective and person-centred. And NHS Scotland Assure, as I've said previously, it aims to provide advice on how to mitigate risks or problems or difficulties to enable successful outcomes in the context of the NHS around the planning, design, construction and maintenance of the healthcare environment. Our technical guidance is a series of recommendations which allow NHS Scotland boards to comply with their statutory duties, and they can be quite wide-ranging. For example, there's ones that look at specialised ventilation for healthcare premises. There's ones that look at water safety for healthcare premises, and they supplement extant guidance such as building regulations, building standards, and I suppose help ensure that there's compliance with things like the Health and Safety at Work Act, workplace regulations, the Health and Social Care Act, and Health and Safety Executive Guidance as well. So we have in the scope, etc., we have included links to our guidance if anyone wants to have a look at that, and then they can see how their research could potentially support that. I think that's quite important. Our services are responsible for the production of expert input into the development of our guidance, and we're responsible for ensuring that stakeholder engagement and input is sought throughout. We will engage with our national and advisory groups that are both clinical and technical to ensure that any guidance updates or a reminder to guidance are done in the most rigorous way. And I suppose fundamental to that is that they're supported by a strong evidence base as well. We have healthcare scientists who review literature and make sure that our guidance recommendations are supported by that evidence base. But where there's gaps in that is exactly what we are looking for you guys to take forward. If there's a gap in the research, then we're looking for you to help build upon that so that we can make sure that that evidence base is as strong as it possibly could be. In terms of the themes, I talked about them basically at the start, but I wanted to put them up on the screen as well, just to make sure that everybody has sight to them. And again, they're included in the scope and on the landing page for the commission. But they basically include water systems, including drainage, the lessons learned from COVID-19, ventilation systems, human factors, ergonomics, infection prevention and control, pathogens, the microbiome, AMR transmission and risks to the burden of disease in the hospital environment, climate change requirements and the unintended consequences of this in built environment risks, hospital design and the role of safety and harms in reflection to medical gases and electrical systems. I suppose the one thing that I would kind of reflect on with regards to these, a lot of these don't sit in isolation. So if we look at water systems, that might need input from our IPC colleagues, it might need input from design colleagues, and engineering and water chemistry, things like that. So none of these things by themselves, they're all quite wide multidisciplinary themes. Like human factors can also come into like water systems or ventilation systems, how people progress these things effectively when they're carrying out their jobs. So there's a lot of different elements that can combine to give a successful outcome. I think ultimately what I'm trying to see is these themes should not be considered in isolation. And I suppose the other thing to point out is that infection prevention and control runs through all of these. I suppose further detail on how the themes outlined and how they relate to the NHS Scotland guidance can be found within our guidance documents and on the NHS Scotland Assure webpage, and we're more than happy to provide a link to that in the chat, etc. But I suppose the one thing that I would point out, if there's any areas where you feel that you're stuck or you're leading some insight, reach out to Napier and they can put you in contact with us and we can see what we can do to give you some insights around that. Suppose to come to the important part, applications are sought for individual projects or interrelated projects that can together can have a high level of direct impact to address the improvement of risk management and quality in the healthcare built environment across NHS Scotland in relation to the themes that we've just considered a wee second ago. Applications should have a well defined focus related to the themes as indicated previously, and the fund will prioritise research which falls within the categories of applied science and experimental development as detailed within the Frascati definition of research. The theme is open to applications which address the outlined theme, have a cleared, strong justification for the importance of the research and its potential for impact, i.e. how it impacts on our advice and guidance. They should have a strong case for the research demonstrating the value, importance and potential impact of the research to ultimately improve the quality and management of risk in the healthcare built environment. Where there's collaboration and engagement, the application should clearly demonstrate how organisations may use the research findings that they have engaged in the design. I suppose you should show how you're considering that the multidisciplinary nature of these things. Sole applications with a fund, I don't know, Linda, maybe you'll go into this in a wee bit more detail, but sole applications with a funding limit of 300k and a maximum lifespan of 2 years. Linda again will go into more information around costings, but again guidelines around that can be found on the Napier webpage. I suppose the other thing to point out is consortia applications where funding is requested above the 300k element, they should be discussed with Napier in the first instance. I suppose in terms of things that are out of remit, that is research that is not novel and is out with the research that have been defined as being applied. They won't be considered. Research which does impact on the advice and guidance of NHS Scotland's Assure should be considered, and studies that duplicate or overlap with other ongoing studies, unless there's a strong rationale for doing that, will not be considered. I don't think I've got anything further to add apart from that. If there's any questions, obviously we can take that at the end. I'm going to pass you over to Linda Johnston, Project Management, who she'll take you through the process and mechanics of the fund in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Geraldine.
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, and I'll attempt to share my deck. Right, okay. Let's try and do a slideshow. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. So just to kind of rattle through a few slides around the project and the process. I just wanted to kind of quickly do an overview. I'm conscious of time and wanting to try and go through this relatively quickly so that we can allow time for questions from people. And I know there's some stuff going in the chat. So just briefly, quick overview. It's a 1.55 million fund. Napier are managing on behalf of NHS Scotland Assure, and as we've previously mentioned, we've had several rounds already with applications coming in, but we've also been on hold for a few months while we amended, enhanced, changed, titivated, whatever your word want to use, some of the processes. So I suppose our one-stop shop is our web page. Lots of information on there that we've kind of covered, Geraldine's touched on. So there's background information, there's the kind of research that'll be funded, there's the scope, who can apply, what are the objectives, how to apply, and events. So previous events. There would also be information in there about any upcoming events or new events that we've got. And after this call, we will post up the recording, and we'll probably put in links to Geraldine and my presentation. So if you don't want to see the pictures and the words, you just want to see the text, you can do it that way. From the web page, I guess one of the areas that we have enhanced and put more information around is scope. And from the web page, it actually takes you to a sub page that has lots more information around scope. So the things that Geraldine covered about the fall in around the support and information and guidance, that's where we've got links to previously commissioned research, the technical guidance, the infection prevention and control. I can never remember. It's the NIPCM, which I can never get all the letters right, but all the links to that are in that scope. There's more information around those 8 key themes, the water, the ventilation, hospital design, etc., that Geraldine pointed out earlier. There's more information around that, and there's more information around what's in and out of scope. So those time limits of 2 years, the 300k, all of that is kind of in there in the in scope, out of scope section. And there's also a little a link to an area for additional information for applicants if you wanted to look at that. So I guess the key is, to have a look at that, and certainly have a look at the scope, because Geraldine's pointed out, several applications have been rejected because they're not hitting the mark. They're not, they're not in scope. They're not giving NHS Scotland Assure what they need. And so if you get to the point where you have a research topic, you want to apply, you're in scope, obviously the next stage is to go to apply under the fund. So this is much more complicated than my 3 simple steps that are on the slide, and I absolutely realize that. But from a a very simple point of view, I know there's a huge amount of work that goes on behind it. So from the web page, we have a section called How to Apply. And within that section, there are links to guidelines, to the application form. There's the link to the application form itself, and there is a link to additional information for applicants. And the guidelines have been, the application form has been tinkered with a little bit. We've added in a layperson summary, and we've changed the costing section because we were getting lots of questions about the costing section, and we've revamped that a little bit. And the guidelines have then been updated to reflect all of that and make sure that we have provided a bit more clarity and more information in relation to all of the different sections. So that the guidelines should give you a good feel for what it is we're looking for in the application form. So that's we're for curiosity, if anyone has, we're looking at version 5 of the application form and version 5 of the guidelines that go along with that. So once you put your application in, the next stages or key stages in the process are the SIFT panel, the peer review, and the right to reply. So applications that come in will go through a SIFT panel. They'll be reviewed by various people associated with the Napier University team and the NHS Scotland Assure team. So applications who are successful and the SIFT panel agree should go forward, they will go forward to the peer reviews. The one thing we've changed on the peer reviews is that we're putting in a set date for them to be completed. And if we have an application that for whatever reason we don't get any peer reviews back for, we would talk to the applicant in that case and figure out what options we have and what we do next. Once we get the peer reviews back, a new stage in the process is the right to reply. So we've added this in. The anonymous peer reviews would be sent back to the applicants for them to comment. So it's a 10-day, 1,000-word process, but we would give you advance warning of when that is so that you have, you can block out some time to kind of deal with that should it come back to you. And then moving on from that, we formerly had an independent advisory board, and applications and peer reviews and all the associated documentation would go to the IAB, and they would look at the applications and decide whether we would fund them or we would reject them or potentially resubmit them. And what we've done is at the IAB, and that's going to become an awards panel and an oversight board. So the awards panel will decide outcomes of the application. So are they fundable? Do they need a minor modification and therefore they could be a resubmission, or are they falling short of the mark and they're rejected? The chair of the awards panel will then present the outcomes to the oversight board, and the oversight board will ratify the outcomes. They will take into consideration things like how much budget do we have left versus what are the fundable applications actually looking at. They also have a role to make sure that we are following our processes and we have good governance. So, it's not just about the money, it's just making sure that we follow everything as well. And then, at that point, the outcome of the oversight board is very much, we're funding it. You then move into the funded sort of process stream, which is slightly different. But we then, there's award letters, there's terms and conditions. We need to get all of those things signed off and get everything set up, and then give you some money and let you go. Resubmissions, there's a resubmission process which we can take you through. I think the view is that resubmissions are going to be the exception as opposed to the rule, and the vast majority of applications we get will either be deemed to be fundable or rejected. And again, those that are unfortunate enough to be rejected, we will give you reasons why, why the panel and the board have felt that they reached that decision. So just moving swiftly on, we're our round 5 timeline. This is our round 5 timeline as things stand. So we relaunched the fund. I think actually the emails went out on the 14th of November, but we've completed that task. The closing date for this fund is going to be the 2nd of February. And we then have dates for the SIFT panel on the 21st of February. The peer reviews we expect to have back by the 17th of April, and the right to reply responses we would have in by the 3rd of May. The awards panel will then happen towards the end of May, and the oversight board towards the middle of June. We don't have the exact dates in the diary at the minute, but it's a reasonable kind of place for you. You'll get an idea of where we're looking at. So an application that comes in the 2nd of February, if it goes successfully through the process, you should have an outcome by end of June is where we're pitching that. And again, just to reiterate where we are. So lots of information on our web page. I should point out that that is a new URL. So anyone that has been involved in us previously, the old web page that had an old, well, it had a different URL. I'm hoping that someone somewhere in the background has rerouted that to point to this web page. However, it would make life easier if you just access the new URL. And then any inquiries that you have. So we've got our generic email address, and there's a couple of us that kind of look after that. So we should be able to get back to you quite quickly, and I will learn how to spell inquiries properly. And that's really just me, bit of a trot through there at speed, but thank you very much for your time. And I think we'll just open up to questions now. So what we might do is have a look at the chat first, and we'll kind of run through that and see what we've got come in, and we'll try and pick them off first. So right, let's see, where are we? So who's this from? Dick. Geraldine, you're describing exactly what we have done successfully with 2 unis, Surrey and Southampton, which produced first class honours. I would like to discuss these with you, please. That's from Dick. I don't know if we want to take that offline, Geraldine. Yeah, so we'll maybe set something up with Dick and Geraldine to have a chat with out with this meeting. Sarah's posted up the NHS Scotland Assure link for people if they want to look at that. However, that they can also access that. You can access that from the scope page. All those links are in the scope in the Napier website as well. So Dick, there's another post from you, but I think we'll just lump that in with the conversation that we'll arrange with Geraldine. We've got a question from Karen. What about hazardous drugs, preparation and disposal? Thinking mainly about cancer treatments. Anybody want to pick that up?
I think that might need some further discussions. For me, I was thinking there might be some scope if it's around, for example, water and ventilation, but I think from what's on the page, we would need some further insights.
I don't know if Karen's on the call and she wants to elaborate on that. Okay, we'll move on. Right, okay, that's Kit, right. Donald's posted up a link to Napier. Right, Isaac, what nature of additional requirements are required to accompany the application form? I am asking this because your guidelines include ethical approval from applicants' institution, but RIE says externally funded applications do not need ethical approval. I think it depends on the application. We've had applications that don't require ethical approval, and we've had applications that do require ethical approval. So I think in terms of when we have said additional requirements to accompany the application form, we were thinking about things like letter of support, or if you wanted to do a project plan as on a Gantt chart and send that separately, or if there was something that you wanted to put, as opposed to putting it in an appendix, if you wanted to put some information about your particular application in a separate document, that's what we would be looking for. Again, I think it depends very much on what the application is and whether you do or don't need ethical approval. Geraldine, you've got your hand up.
I think, yeah, you would expect that to have been considered and I suppose noted whether or not it's actually needed. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with the fact that externally funded applications do not need ethical approval. You need to consider the ethical approval that's needed for each application.
Isaac, I'll come back to you on that, unless you want to, if you want to ask a question, more than happy, but I'll happily kind of pick up with you and we can talk to RIE people and see what's going on. Dick's asked a question about whether we expect IP to have been registered. And IP is always one that I love to hate. But I think it depends on the application, and because I know we talk about foreground IP and background IP, and it depends on the particular application. It may be that we we would need to have a conversation with you in respect of the specific application or item that you're talking about. Does that make sense, Dick? Because each of these things, they all become their own individual little world, and it depends on the application and what the IP is that we're looking at. Right, what's next? The fund initially had around 1.6 million. How much of that is left at this stage, given there have been successful proposals prior to this relaunch? I don't know if I'm allowed to say how much is actually left, or whether because the other thing is it will change. I mean, it could change tomorrow. So, I mean, we've still got money in the pot. So, that's why we're relaunching it and we're saying, please apply. So, there is still money there. But I don't know that I'm allowed to say exactly how much. So forgive me, Dominic, I'm gonna avoid that question. Kim, are you considering projects that are around shared social spaces that are linked directly to well-being of staff based on evidence already obtained? Would this come under the remit of COVID-19 and hospital design? Geraldine, I'm gonna bump that to you.
I think reading between the lines, potentially there's some elements there that might have, I suppose, transmission elements, etc. But I think we would need to have some further discussion. I think if there's things that you're considering, in the first instance, my advice would be to reach out to Napier, and they could help with that initial insight, so to speak. But there's elements of that you could potentially say, yeah, that could be linked, but there's other elements that you would say, no, that's kind of out of scope. So the IPC elements may well be. Other ones I think would need some further discussion.
Yeah, okay. So Kim, if you're on the call and you want to ask a bit more about that, we're happy to take a bit more info. But if not, we are, equally happy for you to drop us an email, maybe with a bit more meat in the bones. Oh, there's Kim.
Yeah, no, sorry, it wasn't. Basically what it's about is we've developed evidence about staff having shared social spaces, because a lot of hospital design and new buildings is like open plan offices, and whether there's actually areas where doctors or healthcare professionals can meet together, compared to being, there's no offices now, there's open plan offices, but no shared spaces where they can get away from patients and so on and so forth. So that's what we were looking at, but I'm not sure whether it comes under scope of this.
I'm not entirely sure that it does, to be quite honest with you, Kim.
That's helpful. That's the reason why I came.
Okay.
Better to know one way or the other, eh?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Okay, next, Ahmed, can you elaborate further on the expected impact, short term and long term? Sorry, maybe need a wee bit meeting the bones in that one.
I think as a starter for 10, in terms of the impact, it's how it impacts on the guidance and advice that we give. So again, I would be pointing people to have a look at that and to see how their research can actually influence that.
I don't know, Ahmed, are you on the call? Do you want to?
Yes, I'm just I received a note about previous one project about the impact. It could be just they said, for example, we cannot believe that it has a short-term impact, or so we are not sure here what we mean by short-term impact and long-term impact. So
I don't think we've actually used those terms. I think that the terms that we've used is the impact on our advice and guidance.
Okay, that's fine. Just thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ahmed. And yeah, if you look at the documentation and you've still got questions, please come back to us. Kate has asked a question. Where am I? Before we submit a proposal, can we discuss it with you first? Absolutely, yes. You know, send us an email, or I'll probably have your email from here, but we can absolutely, you know, we can pick it up with some of the people on the team in Napier in the first instance, and then if we need to go to the guys in Assure, we will do that. I'm paraphrasing by not using proper names of universities and NHS Scotland Assure, but yeah, Kate, get in touch. We're happy to kind of discuss things. Dick, is there any requirement for match funding? So on Napier student-based projects, do you prefer single or group projects? And are these, what's that, 1005 pre-funded, 100% pre-funded? I mean, we've not come across match funding as yet. It's not something, match funding isn't something we have. And in terms of the costings, that's a section that's really been beefed up on both the application form and in the guidelines. So for higher education or similar research organizations, it would be 80% FEC. But for things like businesses, it's 100%, but there's kind of sort of details about what would fall into that 100% for businesses. You know, things like we wouldn't expect to be paying VAT because we would expect them to be VAT registered, so that would fall out. And then I think NHS, it's more about, oh, somebody's doing a wonderful job for me back here, thank you. So we've detailed, you know, what would we would pay for within an NHS budget, and then we've got other which covers charities and any other bodies. So there's a lot of detail in the guidelines about costing, so hopefully that would help. Right, what's next? So I think someone's saying, Kate, if you can contact the team at Napier, they could support further discussion. There you go. Somebody's already answered it for me. I didn't read down. So last one is from Natasha. Would projects that focus on hospital systems fall under hospital design, or is this out of the scope of the funding?
So I suppose my question back to Natasha would be, what do you mean by hospital systems?
Hi everyone. I was thinking about making hospital systems more accessible for people with disabilities, particularly people with learning disabilities. So looking at how to make the NHS 24 call system more inclusive and accessible and usable for people with disabilities. So would that be something that would fall under hospital design, or is that out of the scope of the
No,
funding?
if in terms of design, we mean the actual design of the
Design.
facility itself.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. I think I may have. Right. I've picked up and covered all the questions in the chat. So I guess it's really a question of, does anyone else on the call have any questions? You know, if you want to put them in the chat, or you want to just, you know, put your hand up and ask away. We've still got 9 minutes of our hour left. So yeah, you can tell it's lunchtime. So what yeah, any questions from anyone else on the call? Okay. So what? Oh no, Sarah.
Sorry, Linda. I was just wondering, based on Dick's question around the Napier student-based projects, is that looking more at co-sponsored PhDs and around the funding, and maybe that's something that can be picked up in those discussions, but it was just clarity around if that was what we were referring to there. And I think there's also another comment just in there as well, at the end around collaborators.
Was that in Dick's question? Did I skirt over something?
No, it's just at the end there. So I think Dick's just asked if, for example, a South Korean collaborator wishes to be involved, would this be okay?
Yeah, I think we've kind of almost said that the call's open to anybody anywhere, but the benefit has to be for NHS Scotland Assure and for NHS Scotland. So we're not going to fund something that benefits South Korea and not Scotland. And I'm only picking South Korea because that's what you've mentioned, but we wouldn't, you know, we're not going to benefit something that, or pay for something that's going to benefit, you know, ultimately it might be something that benefits Scotland first and then moves over to benefit South Korea or any other country in the world. But the initial view is that it should be benefiting NHS Scotland. Hope that answers your question, Dick.
Linda, I was just going to add to that, I suppose from an NHS perspective, there's certain considerations around collaborators that the NHS wouldn't be affiliated with, and we need to take that into account with our standard financial instructions as well. So we could do that if something came in that we had to consider. Yes,
there are people and groups that I suppose fall on the wrong side of the track, shall we say, that we wouldn't fund an application from them. Hopefully none of them darken our door and we never have to do that. Right. Is there anything else? Okay, I think we will say thank you very much for your time. We hope you have found something useful on the call, either from Geraldine or myself. We will get the recording up onto our webpage, and we'll try and get the decks up so that you don't have to listen to all the stuff. You can just go to the decks if you wanted to access a particular piece of information. The web page itself has lots of information there. And if you have any questions, either as a result of looking at the web page or from the call, we've got our email. So please get in touch with us. And what we'll do, Kate, I'll try and sort something out with yourself, and Dick will put you in touch with Geraldine and Sarah and try and sort out a call for you. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, which is particularly cold in Scotland, but might be slightly warmer wherever you are. But all the best. Thanks again. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.